secondary color correction is where you apply a correction to a specific portion of the picture, whereas a primary color correction is where you would apply an adjustment to the whole picture. So one of the favorites for a primary color correction is the kind of Schindler's List idea, where you can pick out a particular color and then desaturate everything around it. So for instance, here I have a shot of some guy who's obviously had a drink, and he's got some red stuff on his t-shirt there, and what I'm going to do is select just that red element and then desaturate everything else that's in this picture. Now to do this, I need to bring up the information panel for this particular picture. So to do that, I click on the I button down the bottom right hand corner of this window, and then that brings up the information panel, and I need to select the clip that I want to affect first of all. So I've selected that in the timeline itself. Now over here in the information panel, I have a correction 1 setting. Now normally what I would do is apply the correction first, the primary color correction, using the correction 1 item here. So I could go in, click on the arrow, just as we've seen previously, adjust the exposure so that you know, it's kind of the correct kind of exposure for this particular picture, and then that's all fine. Now normally for a secondary color correction you would add an additional correction state, and to do that, up here where it says color, you see you've got a little plus button which allows you to add multiple corrections, color corrections to a particular clip, whether they be primary or secondary. So if I click on the add button there, you'll notice I now have correction 2 appear underneath. Now this allows me to do other things with this particular clip. Now what I want to do is, as I've said, select that red element of this particular picture and desaturate everything outside of that. So just over here I have a little picture of a pipette which allows me to add a color mask. Essentially, choose a color. So if I click on that pipette, I can now hover over my picture, and if I keep my finger on the mouse button, you see there it starts to highlight some of the red. And as still with my mouse finger on the mouse button, as I drag, it makes that circle larger, which now starts to include more things that are red. And I could keep going, but then all of a sudden it starts to add a little bit more of the background color in. But I can shrink that back a little bit, so that what you're seeing here is a desaturated preview. It's showing you exactly which portions of the color and how much of that particular color it is actually selecting. When I release the mouse, nothing really happens. It's still full quality picture, but once we start to make adjustments to this, you'll see what exactly is chosen. So here we have color correction 2. There's my color mask. It's showing me a little bit of that particular picture there. I also have a softening element here to allow me to have more or less of that particular color. So now when I want to make an adjustment, again, just as I did with a primary color correction, I can click on the show correction button here, just on the right, and there it looks pretty much exactly the same as the primary color correction, apart from just down here we have 2 distinct new buttons that are available to us: inside mask and outside mask. Now this allows us to make adjustments to the inside portion of the mask, which would include the red element, or the outside portion of the mask, which would be outside of the red element. Now this is what we want to do, is adjust the outside mask, and I'm going to click on the saturation tab here, and with the global slider, if I bring it down, you'll notice that it's now taken out all of the color out of this particular picture, apart from the red. There are some elements of other colors that it started to include as well, as it's taken out, because there is a large portion of red in some of the other colors that are in the shot. So the brown there, for instance, the brown on the table. But if I want to be a little bit more specific with this, in my color adjustment box up here, I've got the little arrow to take me back to my slider. What I could do is basically click on the pipette again and start to re-choose the areas that I want to be affected. So if I want to change it to green, for instance, I could click over here on the green t-shirt. There, I'm now starting to affect the green and nothing else. And depending on how big I draw this circle, depends on how much it's actually going to start to include. So again, I'm clicking and dragging. The smaller the circle, the less of that particular color it's going to be using. So I've chosen the green there. I then have the slider on the edge here to be able to increase or decrease the actual kind of expansion of that particular color it works on. So if we try the red again, I go back, click on the pipette over here, click on the red, and there we go. I can then bring the slider back forward so I can start to affect less of the picture. So that's one form of secondary color correction. So a second form of secondary color correction is to apply a vignette. And again, we look at this clip, we have a correction 1 already available, and then I can add an additional color correction, and there we go, there's my correction 2. But just next to where the color mask was, we have the ability to add a shape mask. If I click on that button there, you see there I get this circle, which then allows me to expand and adjust. I can make my mask bigger, smaller. If I click on the outer circle, it allows me to affect the softness. Here then it shows me I've got a shape mask. That's great. What I can do then is click on my arrow next to my correction 2 to see my color correction. And then again, for the mask, I can affect the inside or the outside. So for instance, if I wanted a certain portion of the picture to be brighter, then I could just affect the inside portion, and I might think, right, the outer edges of this particular picture might also need to be darker as well. So I can affect both of these. So on the inside of this mask, for instance, I'm going to look at the saturation, and I'm just going to, for comedy effect here, just boost the saturation on the center portion of my picture. Then I'm going to work on the outside of the mask, and I'm going to go to exposure, and then I'm going to bring down the exposure for the outer edge of the mask. And what this has given me now is a bit of a vignette effect on this particular clip. Kind of like the Top Gear effect. I've boosted the saturation, I've been able to give her a corner edge vignette, and then I can click back to go back to my information tab there, and I can see the before and after just by clicking on the show and hide button here. And so applying a shape mask to be able to affect the inside and outside for a secondary color correction is particularly easy here.